You know, you always pay special attention to somebody's last words. This is the last letter that the Apostle Paul is going to write, and this now we come to the last words of the last letter. He's there in a Roman jail. He's getting ready to give his life for the cause of Christ. And here's what he says in 2 Timothy chapter 4 and verse 6 to young Timothy. For I am now ready to be offered, and the time of my departure is at hand. I have fought a good fight. I've finished my course. I've kept the faith. Henceforth there is laid up for me a crown of righteousness, which the Lord, the righteous judge, shall give me at that day, and not to me only, but unto all them also that love his appearing. Do thy diligence to come shortly unto me. For Demas hath forsaken me, having loved this present world, and is departed unto Thessalonica, Crescens to Galatia, Titus unto Dalmatia. Only Luke is with me. Take Mark and bring him with thee, for he is profitable to me for the ministry. And Tychicus I have sent to Ephesus the cloak that I left at Troas with Carpus. When thou comest, bring with thee, and the books, but especially the parchments. Alexander the coppersmith did me much evil. The Lord reward him according to his works, of whom be thou aware also, for he hath greatly withstood our words. At my first answer no man stood with me, but all men forsook me. I pray God that it may not be laid to their charge. Notwithstanding the Lord stood with me and strengthened me, that by me the preaching might be fully known, and that all the Gentiles might hear, and I was delivered out of the mouth of the lion. And the Lord shall deliver me from every evil work, and will preserve me unto his heavenly kingdom, to whom be glory forever and ever. Amen. Salute Prisca and Aquila in the house of Onesiphorus. Erastus abode at Corinth, but Trophimus have I left at Miletum sick. Do thy diligence to come before winter. Eubulus greeteth thee, and Pudens and Linus and Claudia and all the brethren. The Lord Jesus Christ be with thy spirit. Grace be with you. Amen. Pay special attention to someone's last words, his last thoughts that we have in written form. And what I take from this final chapter is that Paul shows us here that although times change and hundreds of years have passed since the Apostle Paul wrote these words, times change and life changes, but mankind's basic needs stay the same. You see, in verse 9, he says, come to me. That speaks to me. He says, I want to see you, Timothy. That tells me that, man, we have a basic need. We have social needs, don't we? Verse 13, he says, please bring with me my cloak. That tells me that mankind has very basic physical needs. He said, bring the books. We have intellectual needs. And then he separates from the books. He says, especially bring the parchments. And I would have to believe that the difference between books and parchments is that the parchments were scriptures, and that shows me that we all have spiritual needs. But in verse 9, he says, Timothy, do thy diligence to come shortly, come quickly. And then his very last words, his very last command at the end of the chapter, at the end of the letter, he reiterates what he's already said in verse 9 when he says, please, Timothy, come here, come see me, come to Rome before winter. Come before winter. Now, I believe that there was a very practical reason for that request. Because we know that winter travel on the Mediterranean Sea, the unpredictability of the winds made it almost impossible, that every port would close down and there would be during the winter no ships. The Mediterranean bottom of the sea was covered with ships who had made the unwise choice to try to fight the unpredictability of the weather in the winter, and so it would be impossible for Timothy to be able to make it in the wintertime to come see him. That's the practical request, I believe, to come before winter. But I believe there was a much deeper reason. I believe that Paul knew his time was short. I believe with all of my heart that Paul knew that he was not going to be alive in the springtime. And so he gives the call. Timothy, please come before winter. I look at that simple command, that simple request. I see three things real quickly and we'll be done. The first thing that I see in that request makes me realize the reality of life's swift passing. Life's swift passing. Did you know that there are seasons in our weather? We have 4, right? Spring, summer, winter, and fall. And we know that that is something that we can count on every year. Spring, we're there right now. The flowers begin to blossom and the birds start singing, and we shake off the frigid temperatures that we've just come through, and spring has sprung. Spring is in the air. It's baseball season, all of those things. And then comes the hot dog days of summer. And it's vacations and picnics and ball games, and then it begins to, there's a tinge in the air, and then it's football and Friday night lights and sweaters and apple cider and harvest festivals. Fall has arrived. And then every year, the cold of winter comes again. Did you know that Solomon tells us there are also seasons to a person's life? And strangely enough, they follow very closely to the weather seasons. There's the spring of life. Anybody remember the spring of your life? I'm talking about adolescence, childhood, infancy, going all the way back. Spring comes and life is ahead with all of its possibilities. And then comes summer. That teenager becomes a young man or woman, and then there's usually maybe marriage and graduation from high school or college, and then on to a career, and then the small children, and life is racing at a rapid pace, and you've got your health, and you're feeling good, and life comes at you, and all of the challenges of life. Summer has arrived. But then something happens. It happens slowly. It's not something we like to think about at parties or talk about, but we begin to, maybe one day, get up and you hear snap, crackle, and pop, and you haven't even got to your Rice Krispies yet. Can I get a witness? Anybody know what I'm talking about? Well, one day, and this just happened to me about 2 years ago, I looked down at my Bible and somebody had replaced the pages in my Bible with a much smaller font. And now I'm looking for these in the store. You know what these speak to you? This speaks that fall has come in my life. You know what I'm talking about, right? And then, eventually, the cold chill of winter comes, and we begin to age, and retirement years, the Geritol generation. Seasons in a person's life. And here's the thing about the seasons of life. You ever notice this? There's some folks that you've been through some of this, and you can either agree or disagree with me. But doesn't it seem like when you were young, time moved at a snail's pace? Oh, for that day you'd get out of school. Oh, if you could only get a driver's license. Oh, if you could only get in a car and drive by yourself and have freedom. Oh, if you could only get a job and support yourself. And then you spend 40 years saying, oh, if I could just get out of the car. And oh, if I could just get rid of my job. Anybody know what I'm talking about? Can I get an amen? And I'm noticing this. But as time goes by, as you get older, life begins to move like a runaway train. It's almost like, you remember a cassette tape and all of the tape was over on this side and you rewound it, and at first it started real slow because they're having to pull all that tape. You guys just Google it. I mean, you young whippersnappers, you don't know anything what I'm talking about. I paid the great compliment to the Dell boys. I said, this is the hottest preaching brother combo since Melvin and Milton. And they had to ask who Melvin and Milton were. That tape goes slow. And then it speeds up. And then as it gains momentum, it's just flying by the end. Seasons in a person's life. It seems like yesterday. I was a young preacher. I got called to preach and preach my first message in 3rd grade at the age of 9. I was a young preacher. And now, boom, I wake up. And this year, I will be 50 years old. And I am sitting in New Hope Church listening to my pastor. And I have to Google some of his references. He said Sunday about slam poetry. I said, what in the world is a slam poetry session? Boy, I'm getting old. Where'd it go? Anybody know what I'm talking about? James 4:14 says life, what's our life? It's like a vapor. Psalm 78:39 says it's like a wind that passes away. Job 14:1 says man is born of a woman few days and full of trouble. Job describes it in one place as a weaver's shuttle. It's just going so fast you can't hardly see it, like a runner who is in a race flying away, like an eagle swooping down for her prey. The moral of this story, what I'm trying to tell you is life is quick. And it goes by quickly, and that is assuming that we live to winter. But how many know that there are many who are snatched away and taken from this life in spring, in summer, and in fall? But at its full length, life is very short. Again, we don't like to think about that. We don't like to dwell on it. But whatever your age today, whatever your health situation, whatever your social status, winter's coming. I've tried to work on this for 2 years, but one of these days I'm working on a sermon. Since I've lived these 5 years in Nashville, I'm going to do a presentation in a sermon on the home of the stars. Since I've been here, I've made it my goal to look up and find a lot of stars' homes. That's not what you think. You know what I've discovered? That many stars' homes, they look exactly the same. They're exactly the same size. What am I talking about? I'm talking about in the cemeteries out here. You go to George Jones' grave. I've been to Hank Snow's grave. I've been to Floyd Craven, on and on and on and on. It's all the same size. And as famous as they were, very few people I've ever seen go visit them. Winter is coming. I know you're thinking this is not a very uplifting sermon, but hold on. The second thought that I think, when I think of Paul's request to Timothy, come before winter, I think not only of the brevity of life, but I think, second of all, of life's stirring possibilities. Life's stirring possibilities. In other words, Paul says to Timothy, look, I'm in prison. I'm getting ready to give my life. I'm a little bit down. I'm a little bit discouraged. I need some encouragement. I need some help. I need some support. Please help me now. Come on, Timothy. I want to see you. I need to see you. And here's the thing that I see from that is the opportunities that we have. Yes, life is short. Yes, life is swift. Yes, life will soon be gone. But hey, we're all alive today. Everybody breathe in your nose right now. Exhale out your mouth. Hey, you're breathing this morning. That means every person here, we have opportunities right now to be of help and an encouragement to somebody else. Somebody needs you. Life-stirring possibilities. I used to, when I was pastor, I'd often close the service this way. Everybody point to yourself. This is audience participation. Point to yourself. That's what I'm asking you to do. This is what I used to do when I was pastor. And we'd close service every once in a while. Repeat after me. I'll pray for you. I'll pray for, and you pray for me. Now listen, I don't care what our health situation. I don't care what our physical limitations. We can all do what I just. And wouldn't it, what a great life that would be. What a great encouragement that would be if we all did that. Imagine with me. My mind's eye, I see Timothy reading this letter. It's been delivered. Paul's last words. Timothy reads the words, come, do thy diligence, come before winter, Timothy. And I imagine him rolling the parchment up, and Timothy says, well, I'm going to do that. I need to see my mentor, my hero, but I've got some other things that I need to do, and I've got an evangelistic meeting over here that I need to close out, and then I've got some other financial matters that once I get all of that straightened out, I'm going to do it right away. And the procrastination sets in. And then just imagine with me, I kind of imagine Timothy going down there to the dock, and they said, no, we're closed for the winter. No way. You'd have to be crazy to go to Rome. It's too late. You'll have to wait till spring. Imagines that he now comes back to the dock. He's got everything in order, but now it's springtime, and he takes the next boat to Rome, and he goes to the prison. He said, I'm looking for a preacher, an evangelist by the name of Paul, and the jailer thinks, oh, the old guy, oh, we killed him a couple of months ago. We executed him. Imagines he goes to the house of some Christians in the area, and they said, oh, yes, Timothy, it's good to see you. And boy, Paul, every time the key turned in the jail cell, he looked up and said, Timothy, is it you? And he was so proud of you, and he talked off, and oh, he wanted so bad. And he left a message to tell you that he loves you. And you just imagine Timothy with tears streaming down his face. Oh, I wish I could go back. All those things that now seem so important to me. I miss seeing my hero. Miss being here when he needed me the most. Oh, I wish I'd have come before winter. There's a Nazarene evangelist. He's passed away now, but his name was Brother Bob Hoots, and had a tremendous testimony. Bob Hoots was going in for just a regular, very routine heart catheterization, and something happened. Complications set in during the cath, and they lost him on the table. And he actually died for several minutes. They were able to bring him back. But the part, and there's some amazing parts of his testimony that don't have time to get into, but the thing that struck me most when Bob Hoots gave that testimony in our church there in Ohio was that he said he remembered he was on life support in ICU. And he said he could not communicate yet, but he could hear his wife and his daughters speaking to him and telling him kind words and telling him words of encouragement and that they loved him and what he meant to them. And he said in that moment, just coming out of that coma, he said, I could think of so many things that I wanted to say to them. But I couldn't. And at that point, I didn't know if I'd ever be able to say them again. Can I ask you a question? Is there something you need to do? Is there something you need to say? Is there a deed, a kind deed, a word, a call, a text, a visit that you need to make? Can I tell you, it's only one life will soon be passed. Life's singular, stirring possibilities. I'm not in the habit in sermons of quoting secular songs, but one of the most powerful lyrics I've ever read and heard is a song that several years ago was performed by the country singer Reba McEntire, written by a man here in Nashville who said it was written by his childhood experience. The song is entitled, "The Greatest Man I Never Knew." Listen to the words. The greatest man I never knew lived just down the hall. And every day we said hello, but never touched at all. He was in his paper, and I was in my room. How was I to know, he thought, I hung the moon? The greatest man I never knew came home late every night. He never had too much to say. Too much was on his mind. I never really knew him, and now it seems so sad. Everything he gave us took all that he had. Then the days turned into years, and the memories to black and white. He grew cold like an old winter wind blowing across my life. The greatest words I never heard, I guess I'll never hear. The man I thought would never die has been dead almost a year. Listen to this now. He was good at business, but there was business left to do. He never said, I love you. I guess he thought I knew. Life's stirring possibilities. Yes, we get depressed. And let's be honest, I'm talking to the vast majority of this room. You're in fall or winter. We've got some spring and summer folks here, so this is for everybody. But I'm telling you, we can get depressed about how the shortness of life and how we're looking at the end and going toward the end of our life. But I'm telling you, there are possibilities for you. You fill a role in somebody's life that nobody else can fill. And while we have the time, we need to say what we need to say. We need to do what we need to do, because life at any age is short. Come, do thy diligence to do it, whatever you need to do, because winter's coming. You all know our family story. Our oldest son passed away 2 years ago, and how quickly I forget the message that I'm preaching to you. It was about 6 months after our oldest son passed that we had sat down in my wife's favorite restaurant. You all know what that is, Chewy's. And we're just getting ready to order, and our youngest son calls. What are you doing? What do you mean, what am I doing? You know, we're going out to eat. Are you there? Yes, we're there. Where is this leading? Do you need something? He said, I'm on my way to work. He works at the Opry. Chewy's is right there next to the Opry and Opry Mills. He said, I'm out of gas, and I don't have my wallet. It doesn't even register to me how a person can leave the house without their wallet. But he does it on a regular basis. I mean, it's just like, it would be like going, you put your pants on, you put your wallet and your keys. He said, never mind. I said, no. Meet me at the gas station right over Music City Road there, Music Valley Drive, 5 minutes away. We'll put the meal on hold. I said, okay. But man, I did it, but I wasn't happy. Anybody ever been there? Anybody here ever got frustrated with your children? Oh, listen, as I drove over there, I was thinking of all the really good things. I was going to make this a life lesson. Here's what I thought. But I'll really get him with this one. An emergency, a lack of planning on your part does not constitute an emergency for me, big boy. That's what I was going to say. That'll be good. And halfway between the restaurant and the gas station, there's a reality hit me. I'd give everything I had to get that call from Matthew. It'd be the greatest joy of my life to get up and be interrupted to do something for him. One more time. And conviction fell all over me. So by the time I got to the gas station, you know what I said? You know the lecture I gave? I didn't say one thing. I got out and I hugged him. He said, I'm sorry, did you order already? I said, don't worry about it. Don't sweat the small stuff. And it's all small stuff. And you know what? I meant it. And do you know what? It's absolutely true. Don't sweat the small stuff. Live in the light of eternity. Winter is coming. Do what you need to do now. Say what you need to say now. Be patient. Be kind, because life is short. And you have an opportunity to bless somebody. That phone call, that encouragement, that card, a thank you, a word of appreciation. I try to live that every day. I've tried to do it in these services by mentioning people. And I know sometimes I worry about that because it leaves somebody out. But, I mean, Glenn gets mad at me. He said, every time we're in service, do you say something about me and the job I do? It's because I appreciate the job. Listen, Glenn Poston will not be we'll really appreciate the job he does in Tennessee after he's gone, because I'm telling you, he's going to be hard to replace. Give me the roses while I'm living. That's what I'm talking about. Hey, do thy diligence to come before winter. Winter's coming. Life-stirring possibilities. And third and finally this morning, when I see the words come before winter, I am reminded of life's singular priority. Paul's invitation to Timothy, isn't that not the same invitation that God gives to sinful man? Come to me before winter. It's the same invitation he gave to Noah and his family. Come into the ark and be saved. It's the same invitation that Isaiah gave and Jesus later gave. Come unto me, all ye that are weary and heavy laden, and I will give you rest. It's the last invitation in the Word of God. Do thy diligence to come before winter. Revelation 22 and verse 17. Last words from God to us, and the Spirit and the bride say, come. Let him that heareth say, come. Let him that is athirst come, and whosoever will. That's a good Free Will Baptist verse. Let him take the water of life freely. What's God's message to us today? Come. Come to me before winter. I'm always reminded when I think of these thoughts. My first job was in Akron, Ohio. I worked for 2.5 years, worked my way through Christian school, paid my tuition by working at Long John Silver's. And can I tell you, in the 1980s, with the Swaggart and Baker scandals, the Jimmies, it was not easy being a teenage preacher named Jimmy. I'm telling you, a sinful and heathenistic world gave me a hard way to go. They teased me. That didn't bother me. But night after night, I worked with a young man by the name of Larry Brunson. Larry Brunson was an African-American 18-year-old boy going to Bookville High School, a football and track star. And when it was just Larry and I, he had a lot of bravado, and he was very popular with everybody, and he was very gregarious and joyous. But he'd get serious when it was just me and him, just working right there next to each other. Larry'd say, I want you to know. He said, my mom goes to church. And he said, I know all about church. He said, but, I'm a track star, and I'm a football, and the girls, and, he said, but I'll get it. I'm going to get it fixed one of these days. I'm going to get in, and I get serious about church, but after I sow my wild oats and have some fun. Larry Brunson graduated from Buchtel, and he joined the United States Navy. He left us at Long John Silver's. But I will never forget, I have a copy of it today, saved. The Akron Beacon Journal, the headline, and I opened the Akron Beacon Journal on May 16, 1989, to see a picture of my friend Larry Brunson on the front headline of the Akron Beacon Journal. Larry had joined the Navy just outside of Portsmouth, Virginia, in the Atlantic. As the USS Cole was headed out, there was an explosion. Larry was working with Richard Childress, who was a 22-year-old young man from Ham Lake, Minnesota. Larry Brunson at 19. They were transferring jet fuel between tanks. And both young men, 22 and 19, at 19 years old, Larry Brunson lost his life. And as I looked at the paper, all I could think of were those words. I'm going to get it right. It'll be okay. I know all about it. But somewhere off, preacher. Maybe in fall. Maybe in winter. But the reality is, none of us are guaranteed to make it to winter. And so the message is, what we need to say, what we need to do, the decision we need to make for Christ, the kind word that needs to be spoken, that person that's blessed you that you need to tell is an encouragement. Do thy diligence to do it now. Can you imagine with me again in closing? Timothy rolls the parchment up. He's just read this letter. He says, I've got to go. That's my hero. That's the man. He's the reason I'm saved, and he's the reason I'm in the ministry. I've got to go see him. He immediately packs up, dispenses, cancels his appointment calendar, goes to the dock. He gets the next boat to Rome. He goes down the steps into the prison. He peers through the dungeon and the darkness, the dampness. Paul, Timothy, is it you? Oh, son, I'm so glad to see you. Yes, Paul, I came as soon as I got the message. Paul, I want you to know, I came to tell you. I'm so thankful. I wanted to tell you all the good things that are going on in my ministry. Paul, I want you to know, and none of it would have happened if it wasn't for you. Paul, you gave me my chance. You gave me my start. You've been my encouragement. You've been my inspiration. Paul, I want you to know I came to tell you I love you and I appreciate you. I just kind of like to imagine that even he stayed in that day, that lonely, sad, and horrible day when they're taking Paul out to the town square to take his life, to chop his head off for the cause of Christ, that maybe he's feeling down and he's hearing all of the insults from the people there and the soldiers, and maybe he looked over and he saw Timothy one more time. And he realized and was reminded with his words ringing in his ear, my ministry will continue. My life's going to be gone today, but the gospel will be carried forward because I invested in this young man's life. And like to imagine Timothy as the chopping block, as the executioner takes Paul's life with tears streaming down his face. I imagine Timothy saying, I'm so glad I didn't wait. I'm so glad I got this chance to tell him one more time. I'm so thankful I came before winter. Do thy diligence. Do thy diligence to come.